because I don't know if I could pull up a video. I don't know if it'll let me go to YouTube. Hold on. Okay, so you type in heartbeat. Okay, let's see, heartbeat animation maybe? Heartbeat. See. All right, I don't know if this will work, but we'll see. Where is my sound?
The purpose of the heart is to pump blood through blood vessels, arteries, and veins to all parts of your body. The inside of the heart is divided into 4 chambers. The top 2 chambers are called the atria and are collection chambers for blood. The bottom 2 chambers are called the ventricles and receive the blood from the atria and pump it to the lungs and the body. The chambers are separated by valves, which control the direction of blood flow. There are 4 valves: tricuspid, pulmonic, mitral, and aortic. Circulation begins at the right side of the heart, where blood from the body comes to the right atrium. This blood passes to the right ventricle, where it is pumped to the lungs to receive oxygen. Once it receives oxygen, it flows to the left atrium and then to the left ventricle, where it is pumped to the aorta and the rest of the body. On the right side of the heart, the tricuspid valve separates the right atrium and the right ventricle, allowing blood to enter the ventricle, but not flow backwards to the atrium. Blood flows through the pulmonic valve to go to the lungs. On the left side of the heart, the mitral valve separates the left atrium and the left ventricle. Blood flows from the left ventricle to the aorta through the aortic valve and to the rest of the body. Arteries carry blood with oxygen and other nutrients throughout the body. Veins take blood back to the heart, which pumps it to the lungs to be oxygenated. The heart arteries, coronary arteries, provide oxygen and nutrients to the heart muscle. The right coronary artery supplies blood to the bottom and the back of the heart. The left coronary artery splits into 2 vessels. One branch supplies blood to the front of the heart. The other branch delivers blood to the left side of the heart. An electric system transmits signals throughout the heart to control its pumping. The electrical signal starts in the sinoatrial, or SA node, which is located in the upper portion of the right atrium and is known as the natural pacemaker of the heart. The electrical signal passes down to the lower chambers of the heart via the atrioventricular, or AV node, which controls the signal so the atria contract before the ventricles. In the ventricles, pathways carry the signal throughout the muscle so that they contract at the same time to pump blood to the lungs and through the body.
Cool. Pretty much what I just talked about. Yay. Okay, so that little visual help. All right. So when we were looking at this heartbeat, all right, in the video, did you notice how it was trying to represent the movement of the blood, how when it went from the atria to the ventricle, a little bit flowed and it stopped, and then from that right ventricle into, they called it the pulmonic valve, okay, how a little bit flowed and it stopped, and then the return to the left atria, and then it flowed to the left ventricle, a little bit flowed, and it stopped, and then from the left ventricle into the aortic valve. Did you kind of, okay. Now, what that's trying to represent is basically as the blood is moving through these ventricles like that, it's governed by pressure. So the opening and closing of all of those valves, the one that they term the pulmonic, the aortic, the tricuspid, the bicuspid, every single one of them opens and closes based on pressures in those ventricles. But getting back to our heartbeat, this is the process. Yeah, this is one I put in. Okay.
Is this an ad?
Yeah.
Well,
So
did you skip the electrical behavior?
Well, that is the electrical behavior. It's just different.
this
than
I
what
just
we
put
have.
it down differently.
She just
So
changed
it's
the one we
all
have.
of those slides that I created in one. I took it and created it in one.
okay.
So if y'all want to write this one down somewhere, you might want to just put it basically saying the electrical behavior. I think the electrical behavior had like 3 or 4 slides.
Yeah.
And I just compressed it into one. So I'll give you a minute to write it if you want to write it. You sure can. You want to take a picture? You can take a picture. So, if I had my chart up here showing the -60 threshold, peak, depolarization, repolarization, remember, that was my SA node. So, the SA node was variable for the actual myocardium, meaning the actual cardiac cells. We have a resting membrane potential, meaning this is the norm for that cardiac cell, the myocardium portion. Okay, so my resting membrane potential is -90. That means that at that point the cell is at rest. When sodium begins to rush in and depolarize the cell, we're going to see that it actually goes all the way to peak at roughly +30. Much further than what we saw on the other one. So +30 would be my peak. This whole time, the entire cardiac cell is depolarizing. Now, here's the thing. Once I peak at that +30, there's a plateau. And a plateau means something straight. All right? Now, this plateau phase is going to happen for roughly 200 to 250 milliseconds. I know, in our minds, it's hard to imagine that amount of time. But during that plateau, where it's basically holding its own, okay, that allows for the blood to be expelled from the heart. It allows for calcium to have its action. You guys remember the troponin? Once again, we're still in muscle cell, so components are the same. Structure is different, but components are the same. And then we begin to repolarize. So if we begin to repolarize, that means we're moving back to my -90, my rest. Do you guys remember, like with skeletal muscle and with nervous tissue, we could have a refractory period? Meaning, we kind of dipped down a little lower than our resting membrane potential and then returned back to it. What was the purpose of the refractory period? It allowed for a resting before whatever, like the firing of the neuron or the contraction of the muscle. However, in the skeletal muscle and the nervous tissue, this could be overridden. If the stimulus was strong enough, the muscle could continue contracting until it was in tetanus. Do you all remember? Do you know what tetanus is?
And is that T-E-N-A-Y?
Tetanus, T-E-T-A-N-Y, or T-E-T-A-N-U-S, tetany.
So it can be overridden in skeletal muscle, you said?
Right, like skeletal muscle, it could receive a stimulus that is so strong, the muscle doesn't get to relax, and it becomes contracted. What we would think of as a spasm.
So what about absolute refractory?
Absolute refractory was the point in the skeletal muscle and the nerve tissue where it doesn't matter how strong the stimulus might be, there was no action anymore. Now, the heart muscle, the heart cell, cannot withstand tetany. The heart muscle has to recover. So every single time, it's going to return to the refractory period before it starts the process all over again. It must return to this point, because if we do not get the recovery from the contraction, the heart's going to stop. The way that we measure this activity of the heart is with the electrocardiogram. What I used to know as EKG, but I guess they decided to use the proper letters and say ECG. Ever had one done?
Not on me, but I've done it on other patients.
Y'all never had one?
I've done one on someone, but I haven't had one.
I've had them. That thing where they like stick the little.
They stick all those little stickers, like they stick them like all around the areas
Yeah,
of the chest.
No.
And then they stick it like on the legs and that sort of thing. And that sticky stuff is only there for like 2 seconds. They hook up all the leads to it, they turn the machine on. About 2 seconds later, they turn it off and start pulling all those leads off. And then pulling them little sticky things off. And you're kind of like, wow, well that was no fun. But it only takes that, because the EKG, ECG, okay, is only 1 heartbeat. That's all they really need to see. But they leave it on there and get several heartbeats because they're checking to see the heartbeat. Why? Do it, Andrew?
Look for abnormalities or consistency within from beat to beat. And
They're looking for something abnormal. Y'all ever seen Young Frankenstein? And Igor brings him a abnormal brain. I just love that. Well, the name was abnormal. I love that. Because there is a norm on the ECG. Any of these peaks and valleys, lines, if anything wavers from what is the norm, something is wrong. Now, when you look at the ECG, it's telling you information about action potentials of the nodes. SA node, AV node. It tells you the action potential of the myocardial cells, okay, the myocardium, the cardiac cells. It gets amplified and recorded based on those electrodes that they place on you. So, if we look at the ECG, I will forever call it EKG because that's how old I am, okay? But when you look at this, all right, it has these components to it. It has a P, QRS, and T component. We have a P wave, QRS complex to a sharp peak, a segment, a little bit of a line, the ST, and then we have the T wave before it starts all over again. So if we think back, right here, okay, here's my P wave, my QRS complex, my little bit of a line for my ST segment, and then my T wave, and then the resting period between the next heartbeat. And if you look at that resting period of the heartbeat, that looks like a long time. But remember, this is happening 70 to 80 times per minute. And then it starts all over again. Each part tells something about the areas of the heart. Okay? Each area on this ECG tells something about an area of the heart. Atria, ventricles. It's going to tell the doctor something. Your hope is that when the doctor looks at that ECG, they will know an abnormal one. Do they teach y'all to read them, Andrew?
yes,
They do?
I mean, well, I was taught by a doc who knew how to read them, and I didn't go to any formal training line who's just like, hey, this is what you look for. And told me what the more important things to pay attention to were.
Like the peak or the valley.
Correct.
Yeah. So you were told if this was not present or absent or whatever they are, incorrect or whatever the case was, then you knew that person was most likely having a heart attack.
Oh, well, or had some sort of underlying
Health issue.
Because in the Army, most of our patients are relatively healthy, on a day-to-day basis. But in the long term, we're looking more at, are there any things you should be concerned about? We only did EKG testing on patients who were 35 or older. So, and usually they were discharging or leaving the service. So that's why we would do an EKG on them in order to say, hey, 5 years down the line, this is what you should be looking at.
Okay. All right. So, your chosen profession that you're going to go into, chances are you're going to be taught where to place the little sticky pieces, how to do the leads, how to turn the machine on, turn it off, and remove the leads and the sticky pieces. And take that little piece of paper to the doctor to be interpreted. All right? That's pretty much going to be your job. Now, if you decide to go into something else where you're going to be working maybe in a cardiologist's office or something, they'll probably teach you a little further about this.
You hear